I kind of knew from previous experience that just kind of having, for me, like having a little side hustle and a side project, I would never be able to get anything real off the ground because I was always too distracted by my main job. And so I was kind of in the back of my mind looking for some mechanism, some way of being able to, again, to use kind of this line, to burn the boats and kind of force ourselves to say, all right, we are all in on this.
Welcome to the Conversion Aid Podcast, where we help software entrepreneurs to take their business to the next level. Each week, we interview proven industry experts who share their strategies and insights to help you create software that sells. Here's your host, Omer Khan.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Conversion Aid Podcast. This episode is a story about a guy who wrote down an idea for a product in Evernote with no plan on what he was going to do about it. What he didn't realize at the time was that he just planted a seed for a new business that he was going to build. And for the next few months, he played around with the idea, hacked together a prototype over a weekend, but didn't really see it any more than a side project. Today, 5 years later, that idea that he wrote in Evernote has grown into a business that's generating several $1 million in revenue and has over 70 employees. It's a great story, and we'll share what my guest did to turn that idea into a product and business. We'll look at one thing that he wished he'd done differently, which I think will be great advice for anyone in the early days of building their product and business. And we talk about what he still struggles with today despite the success he's had. So I think you'll like this. Before we get started, if you haven't joined the Conversion Aid community, now's a great time to do that. You'll get notified of new episodes right in your inbox, and it's a great way to learn from successful SaaS founders and entrepreneurs. Just go to conversionaid.com/VIP, and you can enter your email address there. Okay, let's get on with the interview. All right, today's guest is the co-founder and CEO of Contactually, a CRM tool which helps you turn relationships into results. My guest is a software developer and entrepreneur who founded Contactually in 2011, and he's grown it into a multi-million-dollar business with over 70 employees. The company's based in Washington, D.C., and to date has raised over $12 million in funding. So today I'd like to welcome Zvi Band to the show. Zvi, welcome.
Omer, thanks so much for having me. And more importantly, we're off to the right start. You have pronounced my name correctly. This is going to be great. I can tell it.
Oh, that's a relief. All right, good. So let's start by talking a little bit about you and what drives you. Some people like to share a favorite quote. Some people just like to sort of just share a little bit about their mindset. So what drives you to do what you do?
The core driving belief that I approach everything in life, and this is something I've really developed over the past 10 years, is condensed down to two words: no regrets. That everything I do, and you can obviously read more like about Jeff Bezos's regret minimization framework, etc. For me, I want to make sure, and I guide my life by making sure that I have no regrets in what I do or what I don't do. And that's really guided all the key decisions in my life.
Give me an example of that, because obviously there's kind of like the big decisions, like saying I'm going to go and take this idea and launch a startup, and because I don't want to be 80 years old looking back and thinking I wish I had done that or I regret not having done that. But what about on a day-to-day basis? Do you find that there are like daily decisions that you make, based on the sort of the no regret principle?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the core things for an entrepreneur to embrace is the acceptance of failure or the welcoming of failure. But it's actually really hard on a day-by-day basis to actually practice that. And so for me, as we look towards major strategic decisions which come up every day or initiatives that we want to try, there's always this push to like, obviously that push kind of push back against, well, let's just kind of, let's kind of maintain the status quo. Let's do what we're doing. And I always have to catch myself in my head going, if we don't do this, I'm always going to regret not trying it. And so even like minute tasks like that every single day, or at the same time, as an entrepreneur, there's so many distractions. I used to go to tons of like different random events and I'd get invited to all these like cool social things. And I stopped going to a lot of them because I realized I would go to them and I'd walk in the door. I'm like, I regret this. I'd rather be building my business right now. And so now that, that even defines how I structure my day and my calendar.
I love it. Love it. I want to sort of get into talking about how you came up with the idea for this business. But before we get into that, can you, in your own words, help the audience understand a little bit more about Contactually? Who are your target customers? What problem are you trying to help them solve? And CRM, there's no shortage of CRM products out there. So I'm curious to know, what is it that makes Contactually different from other products?
Absolutely. Well, let's start at the high level. Let's start with the why, right? Because I'm sure that you've seen you've read some Simon Sinek's talks, and if you haven't, there's an amazing TED talk about kind of the start with why. The why of Contactually is we believe that the best businesses in the world are built upon personal and authentic relationships with clients and partners. And as a business owner, one of the things that I very quickly realized is that the relationships I had in my life were a critical component of my business and my life in general. And maintaining those is a big challenge. So what Contactually offers is we're a relationship marketing platform that helps professionals in relationship-driven companies stay engaged with key relationships. So for example, I use it to make sure that I'm staying engaged with my clients, my investors, our key influencers. A real estate agent gets 85% of their business from people in their network already, so they're able to nurture those relationships to gain repeat and referral business. The applications of Contactually are endless. The core thing is we know that relationships are an incredibly important asset, and you absolutely have to do something every single day to maintain those. To address the second part of your question, yes, CRMs are a dime a dozen. What we saw, though, and this is kind of going to the classic entrepreneurial issue, going back to kind of my story, I saw that my business issue should have been solved by using a CRM. But at the end of the day, the CRMs that are out on the market, while they're incredibly powerful, they're built for managing a sales pipeline, managing a transaction, and they require a lot of work and a lot of manual data entry. What I needed, what I saw others needed, was something that was really built from the ground up, not only just to help the user, but to help the user nurture those key relationships. And so everything we've built in Contactually, from the automatic email and calendar ingestion to the really strong contact database automatically built for you, to the follow-up reminders when a relationship is starting to go cold, is all about helping you figure out who you need to talk to, when you need to talk to them, and what you need to say.
Give me one example of some of the things you described there in terms of how Contactually would help me with managing my relationships.
Absolutely. So let's actually kind of go back to maybe kind of my story. So before this, I was I was CTO of an enterprise software startup that was acquired back in 2009. But then I was consulting for about 4 years. And as a consultant, most of my business came via my reputation and my network. But what I saw is that I would meet someone for coffee and then 2 weeks later completely forget who they were. Or I was so focused on the next client project or the top 1% of my inbox that I wouldn't realize that it had been 3 months since I spoke to one of my past clients. And so what Contactually does on a daily basis is we're looking at all of your email conversations, calendar appointments, social media posts, Excel spreadsheets, etc. And we can say, well, all right, well, Omer here, he is a potential client of mine. Every potential client I want to stay in touch with every 6 months. And it's been 6 months and 3 days since we last had any kind of communication. So that triggers Contactually's brain and says, wait a second, this is a relationship that's starting to go cold. I will get a notification in the morning saying, all right, you should talk to Omer today. Here's what you last spoke about. Here's an email template that you can use. Here's what he's talking about on social media. And then Contactually assists with doing the most important thing, reaching back out and adding value. So Omer thinks of me the next time he needs a software developer. Does that make sense?
Totally. So you take out a lot of the complexity because even if I have some kind of product which reminds me about re-engaging with somebody, there's still a lot to do, right? I mean, the biggest question is, okay, you've given me the reminder, but what do I actually talk to them about? And so I love the way that you kind of describe kind of bringing all this information together and giving it to me in almost this sort of little crisp digest. And then from that, I can kind of figure out very easily where it makes sense to continue that conversation. That sounds great.
Exactly. Who do I need to talk to? When do I need to talk to them? And what do I need to say?
Now, when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, I read something there. So let me just read that out. Have brought Contactually from idea in my Evernote to 60 employees and counting. Well, it's 70 and counting now. Millions in revenue, 12 million plus in venture backing, numerous awards and thousands of paying customers in SMB and mid-market. The thing that struck me about that was what you wrote about from my idea in my Evernote. Do you remember what you wrote down in Evernote when you were thinking of this idea?
Oh, absolutely. I still have that exact note in my Evernote. And actually it's funny, funny that we're talking about this at this point in time, because it was actually about 5 years and 5 days ago that I wrote down, May 15th, 2011, that I wrote down the idea for what I called a proactive CRM. And so we have a strong sense of history in Contactually and serves a number of important purposes. So yeah, absolutely. And I sent an email to the team and I sent them out that exact Evernote. So they see, wow, like they see that that initial idea being written down, and then they can of course see and connect that initial idea with what we are now with, which is this massive, massive opportunity.
But when you wrote that down in Evernote, you didn't have a team. It was just you in those days, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I still have a practice of anytime I come up with a random idea for a company, I'll just quickly jot it down in Evernote. So when I first wrote that down, I was still running my own consulting firm. I had no idea when I was jotting that down that here we would be today, talking about 12 million in capital, millions in revenue, 70 employees, spending all day long doing something that I initially wrote down just kind of, as I was walking to work one day.
So yeah, I just have this vision of people going out there and writing that stuff down in Evernote right now to start building those businesses. Okay, so let's kind of, I want to explore that a little further. So you've written this down. Was it just kind of like, I'm just capturing an idea, or was it immediately like, this is something I need to start doing something about?
Oh, absolutely not. This was just an idea. But it was an idea that we never kind of had any went from idea to lightning moment. Oh my God, this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar company. It was a very slow burn initially. So for example, I wrote down the idea. Then a couple weeks later, one of my engineers who's working for me at the time, he had some extra bandwidth, and I said, you know what? I wrote down this idea. why don't you build a little prototype this weekend, right? Just go hack it out. And sure enough, he came back on Monday morning with the prototype for what would become Contactually. I was like, all right, looks cool. Let me talk to some friends and kind of talk to some people I know and see if the whole idea of like relationships and a CRM and something that helps them proactively build relationships, if that's important. Okay, great, awesome, sounds good. Hey Jeff, you're working for me. Why don't you work with me and as a co-founder on this? And he said, yeah, sure, why not? And then we said, all right, well, neither of us are probably going to be that good at sales and marketing. Well, I met this guy Tony, who was just kind of trying to get more involved in startups. He had a good job, had just left Microsoft as a PM. Why doesn't he help do customer development? And it kind of just, again, then all of a sudden, it's three of us just kind of playing around with the idea a little bit here and there until all of a sudden, an accelerator came by and said, hey, well, we'll fund this idea and we want you to take it very seriously. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, whoa, you mean this can be a real thing? And the rest is history. So, but we actually kind of through that point, like we've been doing, we built the prototype. We'd started following kind of the lean startup principles. We'd done a lot of customer development. So I don't want to discredit anything we were doing, but it's not like we kind of woke up one day and said, okay, cool, let's start a company. What do we want to start a company about? Oh, there's this idea over here. Let's do that. It was just kind of this slow building of momentum, and it's kind of continued up until now, again, it's, 70 people, running as hard as they can.
How long did it take from the time you wrote down the idea to the point where you got approached by this accelerator?
4 months.
4 months, okay. Well, that's still not bad going.
Absolutely. No, I'm very thankful.
So what were you doing in those 4 months? Did you have any users or customers during that time?
We didn't have customers, but we started to get users. Again, it started being kind of friendly. So they have people I know and people I was familiar with, and then they brought on some other people. And then we were doing a lot of customer development, kind of reaching out to people who were talking about relationships or CRM or sales kind of stuff, and brought those people on. So we didn't have that many, but we had probably around maybe 150 users. But at the time, that was enough to kind of prove that okay, there's something here. This isn't just like a junky little prototype.
Okay, so you've got the accelerator involved. How much money did you guys get to start working with? And when they said you need to start taking this seriously, what did that mean? What changed for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll address that second point first, because that's the most important thing. It was a burn the boats moment. Before this, Contactually was being bootstrapped out of my previous company, which meant that 3/4 of my time was going towards my quote day job, running my consulting firm, and 1/4 of my time here and there was going to doing customer development and a little bit of software development for Contactually. And that was the case for everyone else. But I kind of knew from previous experience that just kind of having a little side hustle and a side project, I would never be able to get anything real off the ground because I was always too distracted by my main job. And so I was kind of in the back of my mind looking for some mechanism, some way of being able to, again, to use kind of this line, to burn the boats and kind of force ourselves to say, all right, we are all in on this. And it happened to come in the form of an accelerator deal.
Okay. And how much money did you guys raise with them?
$50K.
Okay. So that gave you, so what did that mean? Did you stop working on the consulting completely and start working on this full time, this idea?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of got the offer to join 500 startups back in, I would say, the first week of October in 2011. The company we made the decision, shut down my company. Basically handed off all my clients to other people. Tony, our third co-founder, quit his job. and the company was officially incorporated October 11th, 2011.
Okay, great. Okay, so you are now full-time on this business. You've got about 150 users. How did you use the 50K? What were you, was that mostly focused on trying to acquire more customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, we weren't using it. We were kind of letting it sit in the bank because we frankly didn't necessarily need it. We knew that we would want to eventually pay ourselves salary, eventually pay, hire a couple employees and start paying them. So it was really, we are just laser focused on on basically doing the three things a company needs to do in its early days. One, acquire customers, which is what Tony was doing. He was doing a lot of customer research and initial marketing, build a product. So Jeff, my co-founder and CTO, he was building the product. And then myself, being who took the CEO title, I was focused on fundraising. I knew we would need to raise a few $100K initially to start again hiring the team and getting the business off the ground. And so I threw myself into fundraising, having never done it before.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about what you were doing to acquire customers. Do you remember
Absolutely.
the first customer that you got?
Well, the first customer that wasn't myself or my mom's credit card, you mean?
Right.
Absolutely. Well, I think the magic of lean startup is you can phase into it, which meant that there wasn't at one point we went kind of from zero to having 500 customers. What we initially started doing is we're just doing customer development calls, right? Just talking to people, trying to figure out what they're interested in. Through those conversations, they would sign up for a trial. My friends would sign up for a trial. We got a little bit of press here and there. We had people signing up for our free product. And then we said, well, let's kind of start to see if there can be a business here. So we're not going to charge customers yet, but we're going to show them the pricing page. Let's just kind of come up with a pricing page and have them pick a plan. Now, we're not going to charge, but we'll at least see, what people are willing to pay, and if people are willing to pay. We can see the number of people who, even though we say it's free for now, they would still choose the free plan versus the premium plan. So we started doing that, and then we said, all right, great. Well, we have people doing this. Why don't we let them optionally pay us? Right? Meaning that you don't have to pay us, but we're going to add a credit card page in. And then, of course, we had a couple of people kind of say oh, well, okay, looks like Contactually is charging me money. Let me throw down my credit card. And we kind of got, again, the initial kind of couple dozen people that way. And then we forced all people who, once their trial was over, to pay us with a credit card, and kind of went from there. And again, it's not an overnight flip. We just slowly rolled in, and as we were learning and learning, we went from learning if people wanted a product like this, to learning how much people were willing to pay, to learning if people were going to pay, to learning, okay, we're now actually going to force people to pay. Will they pay? And then the rest is history. Now we still iterate. We still test. Okay, well, are people going to be willing to pay us more money? So we've raised our prices from $15 a month to $60 a month, because we're always iterating on those core principles.
That's really interesting. So going back to the first point you made about testing to see if people would pay. And so I just want to kind of understand that experience a little bit. So when people came to sign up, they would see a pricing page. They would see a free plan, and there was some paid plans, and they could select which plan they wanted. But you were kind of telling them, you're not going to have to pay anything right now because we're in beta or whatever. But eventually this is how much the plan is going to be.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that was really helpful, right? Because we were, at the end of the day, our belief, and some people in Silicon Valley kind of push back against this, or have pushed back. If you're a fan of the freemium model, for example, I wanted to make sure that we were building a business. And what does a business need? Well, it needs people that will pay for the product, which means that you need to ensure that you're building the right features that people will pay for, and that you're going after the types of customers or potential customers that that would pay for the product. So by having a pricing page, for example, we were able to see the people who even though it was a free product, the moment they saw the pricing page, they'd bounce off. Okay, great. We learned those are not the type of people we want. And by testing out what features we list on the pricing page and then doing customer interviews after that, we're able to figure out, well, what features do people need that they'll pay for?
That's really interesting. So you mentioned you were getting several thousand people coming in through this way. I'm curious what you were doing to reach those people, because initially it sounds like you could just go to your own network and reach out to friends and people that way. But beyond that, how did you start reaching out to people that you didn't know?
Yeah, it's a great question. So initially what we were doing is we had friends and friends of friends and friends of friends of friends. That kind of stuff that happens. We did both through the accelerator and then just through hard work. We got a little bit of press. So, which means, when we raised our first couple rounds of capital, we were able to get in TechCrunch and others. That, of course, sends people to your site. We also started finding bloggers who would be willing to write about us. So we started doing that. We were big users of Quora early on. So, one of the cool things about Quora is, if you're building a CRM product, great, go on Quora and find anyone talking about CRM and message them, right? And say hey, I'm building a CRM. We did a little bit of experimentation with SEO, and that's probably one of the bigger failings, that we didn't take it more seriously early on. But that brought in some customers. And a little bit of experimentation here and there, but is really kind of making sure that the influencers knew about us. And then we were doing everything we could to, once we kind of had someone visiting our site, that we did everything we could to try and convert them into a customer.
Okay, got it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the product. Now, one of the things that I think is quite interesting is that a lot of the times you'll see a founder come up with an idea on how to solve a specific problem, and then they go and build the product. But once you have real people starting to use it, and you start to, especially if you're doing customer development type interviews and getting feedback, you often get a lot of surprises in terms of what you thought people wanted and what they actually want. Were there any surprises for you that sort of came out from talking to customers or potential customers?
Oh, absolutely. The initial product we built, people hated. Truly hated. I mean, and now, even as I kind of think back to it, the product that we had built was so terrible in terms of the feature concept. But I'm thankful, and people kind of still, once people who know about the history will still laugh at me once in a while, kind of say oh my God, that's such a terrible idea. And I'll throw it back in their face and say, you know what? I don't care, because that allowed us to learn what we should build. So for example, the very first version of the product, the main thing it did is that whenever it detected you emailing someone that it didn't know, it would send you an email saying, hey, tell us more about this person. And you would respond via email to that email saying, hey, here are some more details about that person. And then we would save it. People hated that. They found so annoying. But what they said is, well, I really like that you're actually capturing all of the people I'm communicating with via email. There are also people I'm communicating with via social media. And the most important thing that I want is, I want to make sure I'm staying in touch with these people. I'm not just capturing these people, I'm staying in touch. And we said, okay, cool, we can do something like that. We kind of built out something that would, if we noticed you hadn't emailed someone in 3 weeks, we would send you a notification saying, hey, talk to this person. And people hated that. They hated it because we were reminding them to follow up with people that they didn't care about. And then we kind of did some more customer development, and then there were a couple potential customers early on who said, you know what? The thing that you're missing out is that not all of the people that I'm communicating with, I want to stay in touch with. I have certain groups of people, certain quote buckets of people that are important for me. And that now is a core driving part of our product. And we wouldn't have gotten there without being open-minded to the fact that, our idea, that our initial concept could suck, and maintaining an open mind to what else may work and what else we may learn from customers. So I credit 100% of our company's success or product market fit to our users.
Oh, I see. So in the early days, if I had, I don't know, 1,000 contacts, you were reminding me about all of them at some point to say,
exactly.
Okay. And then you sort of filtered it down and said, okay, maybe there's just the top 5 or 20% of my contacts that I need to probably stay in touch with, and kind of became more sophisticated that way.
Exactly. Like, we really learned that people are comfortable and willing to kind of segment their relationships on their own. And then from there, then make sure that you're staying in touch with the right people, not everyone. And that was a key learning that we had not thought of otherwise.
So I'm curious what the reaction was when you told people that we have this product. Earlier we talked about sort of a very crowded CRM market. But from what I understand, from some of the numbers that I've come across, there's still huge potential and growth in this space. But I'm just curious, when you approached people about this, weren't there people just saying, "Thanks, but I'm already using something else"?
They would not that often. Oftentimes, and I think one of the bigger opportunities we have is that CRM, while it's one of the largest overall IT expenditures, it's still a fraction of the size that it could be. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the people that are using Contactually now, their previous CRM was an Excel spreadsheet or a stack of business cards on their desk. So we haven't really had the same kind of product competition from a market perspective, like when talking to investors or talking to press or talking to influencers, distinguishing ourselves from every other CRM on the market. That's actually something that we struggled so much with early on. And honestly, it's still a struggle today. It's still something that we're working on figuring out. How do we know we're different, our users know we're different, but how do we almost on a one-liner basis, make sure that we're completely distinguished from every other CRM on the market, or almost figure out a way where we can bypass that conversation together. Like, the moment they learned about Contactually, they see it's a completely different product.
Okay. So that's interesting, because it sounds like if you can sit with somebody, give them a demo of the product or show them what it does, they get it instantly in terms of how the product is different and how it can help them. But it's not always that easy, as you said, to sort of just explain that in a few words. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the one thing that, if I were to go back in time, I would have done a lot more work very early on, is to really work on our messaging and positioning. That's one of the things, like, we always kind of said, yeah, we know we need to, and we never did.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, is that you seem to have a great success story, right? Going from an idea you wrote down in Evernote just over 5 years ago to a multi-million-dollar business. It sounds like you didn't really need to do any of that stuff. So why do you feel that was something that you look back and feel you should have done a better job at?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the jokes is, we're doing incredibly well in spite of ourselves, right? Or that, we're making just the right amount of mistakes to get us to where we are today. Yeah, I mean, listen, don't get me wrong, we have a lot to be thankful for. And as you kind of see, like, one of our core values is transparency. And so we care a lot about company culture. And so that's kind of one of the things being exhibited here. I would say that, yeah, I mean, we definitely have had issues in the past where if you were to go around to, let's say, the 20 employees I had at the time or 30 employees I had at the time and ask them, what is Contactually? You would get 30 different responses. And I think and I think the reason is because top down, I didn't even have a clear definition of what Contactually was. I would kind of keep rephrasing it every single time someone spoke to me, or people go to our website and they don't really get what it is that we do, but it's enough to get them interested, and they would kind of see our demo, see our products, start using it and go, oh my God, wow, why didn't you explain this on your website? Why didn't you tell us what this is? And that's honestly messaging is still something we struggle with. We still look at our website and I think we're better than ever, but we still know there's so much opportunity to better explain what on earth Contactually is and what is the value it provides to people.
So we've talked about multi-million-dollar revenue. Can you give us a better idea of kind of where you guys are? What's the size of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give as transparent as we are, I can give rough numbers. We're well above 2 million revenue, and we're well on the way to 10 million revenue. So we're in that kind of, if you read anything by Jason Lemkin, we're on kind of the long, slow climb to 10 million ARR.
That's a nice chunk of change.
Yeah, we have a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah, totally. So we talked about the messaging and the positioning, and if it's something that you're struggling with or right now as well, then I'm not sure that maybe it would have been any easier to solve in the early days. But is there anything else that you sort of think about and just say, I wish I had done this back in the first year of building this business, because it would have just avoided some pain down the road?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the core things is focus, to start off with, meaning that entrepreneurs, because of the way that we're built, we're always attracted kind of the next shiny object. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's good to always keep your eyes open. But if you're not actively maintaining things and really focusing on like what you think will work and then committing to it and following through, you have a big problem. So for example, we know that SEO is or could have been a large growth opportunity for us. And it's, again, something only now we're taking very seriously. But we'd started to because we had heard so much that SEO was an important thing. We started to do all this SEO stuff 5 years ago. But we just kind of dropped it because we said, oh, well, let's try something else instead. And if we had committed to, we probably would be in a much better place now. So that's one example. I think the thing that I hope I'm able to provide to every software entrepreneur listening is, obviously I'm assuming, Omer, you've talked to everything. You've talked multiple times about MVPs on this podcast, right?
Sure.
An MVP, the key lesson for me that I wish I was able to go back to 2011 Zvi Band and slap him in the head and educate him about is an MVP doesn't necessarily mean it has to be buggy software. It has to be a minimal version of what you want to build, which meant that instead of, let's say, building out one feature of our eventual platform and doing it really, really well, we built 15 things, but we built them all kind of well, meaning that they, it's kind of like almost like, building a car, but only building it with 3 wheels, and those 3 wheels actually happen to be squares. That's kind of like what we ended up doing. So it kind of like it proved that people wanted something like this, but it didn't really work that well. And that kind of issue that plagued us for years, and it's only kind of now, over the past couple of years that we've started now regularly producing a high quality product. Because in our thirst to learn, we had this, you've probably heard the Facebook mantra of move fast and break things. Mm-hmm. That actually is a bad idea. I'll be completely honest, because what you're doing is you're kind of teaching yourself to go and build junky software that may prove that, yes, okay, people want something like this, but it won't work. And so I would say you should really focus on not trying to build everything, building a few things, but making sure those few things work and work really, really well.
So I think that's really, really good advice. And I think probably people have heard that or kind of know that to some degree, but it's still not easy to do. And I think the fear is that if I go to my potential customers and I show them a product with one feature, they're not going to be interested. And if I can put in 15 features which show them a whole bunch of things that this product can do, they're more likely to want to buy my product. And I think that sounds like the kind of the same dilemma that you guys got into when you were building your MVP. So what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe struggling right now to pick that one feature?
Absolutely. I would probably argue it can always be distilled down. It may not be one feature, maybe it's two or three. Maybe it is something that, you can't really follow the lean startup principles and it really has to be 15 features. But for heaven's sake, do not repeat the same mistake we did. Make sure that what you're doing works and works really well. You could probably simplify it down and you'll want to add every other option and bells and whistles later on down the line. But so you can still, even if it's a larger number of features, you can still boil it down to the core functionality you want to get across in those features, but make sure they work really well. Don't build a car with square wheels.
Excellent advice. All right, it's time for our lightning round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to answer them just as quickly as you can. Ready?
Let's do it.
All right. What's the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
You will receive tons and tons of data points and pieces of advice throughout your entrepreneurial journey. And the core thing a CEO needs to do is sort through all those pieces of advice and figure out which ones they follow and which ones they don't.
What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Most recently, the book that's really inspired me is Bill Walsh's The Score Takes Care of Itself. It really teaches about excellence in leadership.
What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful entrepreneur?
I believe it's the ability that to no matter what, no matter if they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, to always have a bias for action.
What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Every day I start off my day with a blank piece of paper upon which I write every single thing I'm supposed to do that day, and I do just that.
Going back to your Evernote, what's another business idea that you wrote down that you'd love to pursue if you had the extra time?
Oh man, I really like the whole. It's kind of a consumer idea. I really like the whole idea of with digital cameras, we're taking so many pictures, but as we know, doing post production and cleaning them up is important. So I would do post production and photo curation as a service.
Nice. What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I was in the San Diego County spelling bee, and I got kicked out in one of the final rounds because the judge mistook sorbet for sherbet, and I spelled the wrong word.
And finally, what is one of your most important passions outside of your work?
So beyond my obnoxious Cocker Spaniel and my lovely wife, I am a big proponent of the local DC tech community. And I actually run one of the largest tech meetups in the country right here in DC.
Nice. Zvi, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been awesome. I know you've been traveling. You were on a red eye recently. We were exchanging mails at 2 a.m. it was 2 a.m. in the morning for you. It was only 11 p.m. for me. So I appreciate you making the time and sort of turning up here with so much energy and enthusiasm and sharing the story of Contactually. If folks want to find out more about the product, they can go to contactually.com. And if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can follow me on Twitter, SKEEVIS, so that's Skeevis, or they can visit my blog, zvi.band.
Wonderful. Thank you again. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the best.
Omer, thanks so much for having me.
Cheers. All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Zvi Band of Contactually. You can get to the show notes for this episode by going to conversionaid.com/116. If you want to support the show, then I would always appreciate you submitting an iTunes review. So if you'd like to do that, just head over to conversionaid.com/iTunes. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for listening to Conversion Aid, the podcast that shows you how to take your business to the next level and create software that sells. But things don't have to end here. Head over to conversionaid.com/VIP and get yourself on the free VIP list, where we share special insider content and news about upcoming episodes. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time.